Well, hi, this is Ina from Taproot Tarot. Today I'm going to respond to Jack Greenwood Tarot and his Tarot Tube Positivity tag. It's his first tag, and I've been watching the responses and really enjoying them. The instructions say to answer the question and then pull some cards to kind of follow up with some thoughts. I think I'm just going to pull the cards and then riff on whatever the question was. So let's turn the camera around and we'll take a look. So I'm going to use The Gay Marseille by Charlie Claire Burgess, since this is just a really joyous deck. It even labels itself as joyfully queer. And it's kind of a fun party deck and very summery. So I really enjoy this deck and thought it was an appropriate choice. And we'll see, I might even reference the book because Charlie Claire Burgess has some really insightful takes on tarot meanings. But I'm going to probably just pull the cards rather than answering the questions first. So prompt number 1 is, how do you deal with negative thoughts or feelings? And instead of a 1-card pull, I will do 3 cards. I tend to read 3 cards as a 1-card pull with pip decks. So one thing that brings me down and definitely sparks negative feelings or, a sense of hopelessness is seeing how people still view the world and seeing people still succumbing to, I guess, kind of bigoted viewpoints and worldviews, and just feeling hopeless about that. Like, how are we in the year of Al Gore's internet, 2026, still having conversations about whether or not to validate trans folks, for example? And that's a conversation that came up recently in the tarot world. And because of the privileges that I occupy, as a white cis het individual, I feel like I have enough safety to stay here in compassion for people who are misguided, because we need to we have to build community and build something concrete in order to survive and thrive in the world that's changing as it is. And that means making connections and having understanding with people around us, even when they don't agree with us. Now, obviously, I don't have tolerance in my comment section for any hateful or bigoted comments, because I want to keep this a safe place for people who don't occupy the spheres of privilege that I have. But at the same time, propaganda is real powerful, man. Those who are wealthier and in power have been perfecting the art of propaganda to keep us divided and keep us under control for literally millennia. So I try to just approach people as much as I can with love and compassion and some understanding about where their biases are coming from. And there are like anti-trans AI videos out right now that are really riling people up, and all of these control tactics are really effective, unfortunately. So I feel like building community and making connections, because I occupy enough safety to be able to do so, is something that can give me hope. The fact that all this, hateful rhetoric is pushed so heavily, and yet there are still so many people who know better and doing the work to educate each other, that gives me hope and helps me to deal with negative feelings on the subject. That being said, I think that's also a reason to keep pushing for inclusive tarot. Obviously, it's really good for folks in marginalized communities to see themselves represented, but it's also great for the rest of us as like exposure therapy. I recently saw a post, I think just yesterday, from the Korean vegan. Her name is Joanne, I believe she's a lawyer. And she posted about making kimchi with her 72-year-old mom, and her mom was very concerned about appearances and has always been very apologetic about aspects of their culture to guests. And she really wanted to sauce the kimchi on the counter just to avoid kind of judgmental comments. And Joanne was like, no way, we do this on the floor in a squatting position. And in my mind, she didn't specify this, but that's a much more ergonomic way to do it. She posted a picture. It was 3 women, including she and her mom, around this huge bowl on the floor, squatting around it and stirring in the sauce and working it in, able to use their entire upper body strength, their whole leg strength, rather than like destroying their shoulder joints by muscling it from the counter. So from a body mechanics perspective, it made so much more sense. But it was also their cultural tradition. And of course, she got some hateful comments like, ew, it's on the floor, or whatever. And Joanne just responded back, well, that's how it's done, so no kimchi for you, you know? But she was furious for her mother, that, you know, her mother had spent decades trying to assimilate, and she's still getting hateful comments. So I think just for us to be exposed to various ways of doing things and various ways of being makes us less likely to have those judgmental and hateful thoughts, and even worse, to make those hurtful and harmful comments. Some of which are done with active hatred, but others are just, you know, innocent mistakes, but they're still hurtful, even if the intent wasn't to be hurtful. And it's difficult for marginalized folks to have to perform their culture for the rest of us, for that exposure therapy. So art and things like tarot decks are one way that can be done without a person being, you know, in that gaze and put in that vulnerable spot. So let's see what Charlie Claire Burgess wrote for the Lovers card. So they go through the historical meanings for this card, but then follow up with, alternatively, it can bring up committed relationships and the continual choice to show up from a stance of love, even when it's hard. Being in a committed relationship does not mean you own your partners, so on and so forth. We're not really talking about relationships here, but that choice to show up with love, even when it's hard, is kind of what I'm talking about here. It's not a one-time commitment, but a continuing series of recommitments in which we get to choose every day how we show up for love. So they link up all 3 together rather than one person making a choice between 2. And the 3 can represent a romantic group, or a group of close friends, or the bonds of a strong community, all of which involve choosing love. And again, there are people who are not safe to show compassion toward folks being hateful toward them. So those of us who do have that position of safety can occupy that role and try to be as welcoming as possible to everybody, and attempt to strengthen our community bonds. Prompt number 2 is, what are you grateful for? I think my answer to this question would be a lot of the kinds of things we're all grateful for. I have a lot to be grateful for, certainly. So let's see what the cards have to say. I find this surface difficult to shuffle on because I love this stone surface, but it kind of has a static cling effect on some of my cards. So bear with me while I'm being super klutzy here. All right, what am I grateful for? There is just all kinds of harmony and goodness and nurturing and caring in this group of cards. So I am absolutely grateful to be in a harmonious place with my work life and the effort that I put into each day. I do feel overworked, I will say that, which is not in the cards. But I'm grateful to be able to keep up for the most part with the amount of work that I have to do. And I'm grateful for the opportunity for that to come from a place of caring for everything that I have, for my domain, you could say, from my own body to my house and my business and, everything that I have to look over. And doing that from a place that's really methodical. I'm grateful for all the systems I have in place that just keep me going and allow me to care for care for my queendom, I suppose. And certainly grateful to have, you know, a house with gardens and a business and all those things that need caring for. Number 3, spread some love or joy. Pull a card or multiple cards from any deck, and whatever comes up, put a positive spin on it to send out to everyone. So number 3, spread some love or joy. All right. Oh, this is lovely. You know, the issues I mentioned earlier were certainly an emotional challenge and disruption in the tarot community. And I think an opportunity to create and build some stable foundations. Look at the paintbrushes in here, you know, we can create our world, if you will, and find a balance where everybody's fears are being addressed, because, you know, that's where bigotry comes from, is from fear, at least when it's coming from people who aren't, you know, in the most powerful echelons of people. Building and creating communities where we do have everything that we need and acknowledge people's fears and feeling obligated toward each other. There's kind of a discussion going on about the, you know, all the various approaches to society that come from the West are really hierarchical and ask the question, what are we owed? In the societies where the powerful are on top, you know, it's just kind of assumed that the wealthier classes are owed the privileges and resources that they have. And in more egalitarian viewpoints, you know, it's assumed that everybody is owed enough to live, but there's a conversation bringing up, you know, the question of being owed anything, and how in many indigenous philosophies it is more about our obligations to others. And when there's nobody really looking out for you, and I think a lot of us do feel unsupported, and that's by design, I think, it's hard for us to give of ourselves and to feel obligated to others, because we have to take care of ourselves and those who are closest to us, and then maybe shut out people who we perceive as different from us. But in a world where everyone around you feels obligated not only for your own safety and support, but for the support of the earth and obligated to future generations, if we can imagine living in a world where everyone around us wants us to succeed and feels obligated to make sure that we're taken care of, then how much more energy and vitality would we have to offer up to everyone around us, to make sure everyone around us is supported. And so I see a figure here that's really well supported. I see a creation of stable foundations, even after things are, you know, shaken up and challenging. So let's see what Charlie Claire Burgess says about the world. They mention that the world represents transcending over the limiting constructs and, you know, coming into our full selves and our full truths and potential. They mention it can represent queer actualization, coming in after completing the work of the Judgment card, which they said represent coming out of the cis heteronormative gender binary boxes, or the graves. Just coming out of all of those labels and distinctions that keep us separated, that keep us homogenized and under control. Liberating ourselves from those ideals can help us to transcend all the hate and come together in support of each other, in support of the earth and future generations. Okay, there's a little light for us. The next one, what makes you happy? Did I already answer that? Oh, what am I grateful for was number 2. This one is what makes me happy. Oh, my favorite, Queen of Batons. Let's let her stay out. I don't usually read jumpers, but... well, I guess we're reading jumpers today. Well, certainly the idea of, disrupting mindsets that have perhaps been limiting for us makes me happy. I really see the Queen of Batons as someone who's ready to defend herself and ready to defend others who need defending. This Knight of Coins is going after that coin. They seem like a really practical person. And it just makes me think of looking for a good deal, which makes me happy. You know that about me, but it just doesn't, that interpretation doesn't go with these other cards as well. But we could call it, seeking ways to make our resources work for us and make sure everyone is cared for and, breaking the paradigms that are in place. But also keeping an eye out for good deals on tarot decks, just as a little side note. That definitely makes me happy. Speaking of, how do you treat yourself? So let's lighten the mood a little bit. All right, number 5. How do you treat yourself? As in, what's some stuff you do in order to give yourself a treat? We probably all have a similar answer to that question, don't we? I'm really trying to not take these off camera, but they're really difficult to handle directly on the table. These are really, really saying strategy to me. Figuring out a problem and creating a method that leads to material stability, but also, kind of a coming and going, a flow in and out of material wealth. So just finding that balance, I think, of maybe being just a very sharp and vicious budgeter, but also lightening up a little bit and not having to intellectually justify every single purchase from a moralistic standpoint. So one thing I've mentioned in a few different comments here and there is how I never have felt like I have to justify book purchases because those are morally justified. But tarot decks feel like an indulgence or something that's not necessary, but they bring me so much joy. So learning to lighten up into the flow while still being smart about it and definitely cutting myself off when needed so that it doesn't ever bring me stress. So I wouldn't want to get in a situation where I bought all the things I ever wanted because that would be stressful. That would take up way too many of my resources, and I've got a system in place to keep my resources balanced. Just a nice, harmonious, happy medium of treating myself, whether that's with tarot decks or paying for activities or meals with friends and family, whatever that may be. making sure that I do invest in some of those things that are treats as well. The next couple questions are about a couple of decks that don't involve pulling cards, so I will turn this camera around and answer those. And question number 6 is, what's the next deck you plan to bring into your collection? And that one is on the way. It's the Fifth Spirit Tarot, also by Charlie Claire Burgess. And it's a funny story why I decided to pick it up. So I was at work and had the random thought that I should get a deck to communicate with my house, which seems weird for me, but I do personify my house, and I kind of feel like it has a spirit to it, and so many people would agree with me. My house was built in 1930, and it has a lot of history, a ton of personality, and it just feels really accepting and kind of, I don't know, just welcoming. And everybody who visits here says that about it. Even the person I bought it from, she was this French photographer, I think, whose husband was like a circus ringleader, very interesting character, but she would just go on and on about the good energy of this house. But even her tenants, she had lived here, but she had moved and was renting it out. The tenants really were bummed out to have to leave because they loved this house, and I felt really bad that they had to leave. But they just talked about, this house was like the main thing even keeping them in this town, because, they'd finished their schooling and everything, and we're planning on eventually moving back to where they were from, but they just loved this house so much, and they even asked me if they could continue renting it from me, and I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not a landlord. I bought it with generous grant assistance because I need a place to live. So I couldn't help them out in that regard. I've also heard stories of the past of this house. Like I have an old hippie friend who said that this was quite a party house back in the 70s, and it was just a really great place to hang out. And then again, everyone who comes over just says, the house feels so welcoming to them. So I think the house definitely has a persona. And I've been impressed by the folks who do have a deck to speak with someone or something specifically, whether they have a deity they communicate with or a relative, ancestor, something like that. Shanna D is one person who has influenced me on that. She talks a lot about having a specific deck for a specific person or entity that she speaks with. And I think that's a cool concept. I don't really do deity or ancestor work, so I can't see myself designating a deck for that, but I thought, I could maybe do that for my house, because I definitely, like I said, personify and anthropomorphize my house. There was a comment section somewhere where, and I can't remember if it was on YouTube or Instagram, but somebody mentioned that their grandmother would tell their house where they were going or where she was going every time she left, and would always tell her plans and things like that. And this person asked their grandmother why she did that. And, it was something about not wanting to make sure the house didn't think that she was going to abandon it, and that it was time to, protect keep watch while she was gone, that kind of thing. So I thought that was really cool, and that's very traditional and all over the world to have a communicative relationship with your house. So I was at work one day thinking, I'd really like to try that out, get a deck that seems like the kind of deck that would relate to my house. So my plan had been to check through my many decks, shop my shelves, if you will, and see if I could find one, because I probably have one that would suffice. But then that day after work, I got home and watched a video on interesting pip decks. Sorry, I'm watching out my window. There's a blue jay just being a maniac out there. Anyway, there was a video by Hidden Magic Tarot on interesting pip decks, and they showed the Fifth Spirit Tarot. And I don't think I realized it was a pip deck. I knew it was a Smith-Waite tradition deck, so I hadn't really looked too closely at it. But it turns out it's a pip deck. And while the pips do hint at the Smith-Waite tradition, they're also pretty neutral. And a lot of the old-fashioned tools and gardening implements and things, and even the wood stove, really reminded me of my house. My kitchen has a spot where the opening to the chimney is covered up, where the flue to an old potbelly stove would have been, because that's how they cooked back when this house was built. And on top of that, all the people in the deck are they're doing everyday things, activities. They're very much, just everyday people that I would see in my neighborhood and around my town, and doing a lot of activities that I would do, or, people I interact with would do. So I just think it's a deck that would communicate very well with my house and my daily life. It has dogs in it too, and I have dogs, so that just kind of sealed the deal for me. So the Fifth Spirit Tarot by Charlie Claire Burgess is the next one coming in, and that is on its way. Number 7, what is your unicorn deck or decks? The Perrin Tarot has been on my list, and it was on my list for when I broke my no-buy period last year. But I told myself, my wish list was way too big, and if anything went out of stock, I was going to be totally fine with it because I couldn't get everything on that list. And sure enough, the Perrin Tarot did go out of stock at Tarot Arts, and that was totally fine. It's a beautiful deck, and someday I really want it. Giordano Berti has come out with a second edition of it, so I could just order it directly from him. There is a mass market version by, let me see, Alberto Peruzzo Editions. And that one was pretty well available not too long ago, like maybe 5 years or something. So I've kind of been on the lookout for a stray copy of that someone might have on hand, or, selling secondhand or whatever, because something about having just the mass market version of it really appeals to me. I like decks of the people, However, I was recently reading about Berti's book of history on the Perrin Tarot that is included with his version of the deck. And of course, his decks are gorgeous. I have 2 of his decks now, and they're so lovely in hand and everything like that. And I love his takes on history. So that kind of got me convinced, well, maybe I should just go for his second edition of the Perrin Tarot. So at this point, I'm kind of hoping that Tarot Arts will get the second edition back in stock. I'm on their list if it does come back in. Otherwise, maybe I'll just treat myself to an international delivery later in the year. We'll see what happens. So that's a unicorn deck. I think I had another one. What was it? Oh yeah, maybe I'm thinking of Tarot du Chien, Tarot of the Dog. It's both a Noem and a Devecchi edition, production. And I saw it first on Mariana's channel, Happening by Chance. And it's so cute. It's a real... It's a very traditional Tarot de Marseille, but with dogs, and it's just lovely. And I don't have any dog decks. I have dogs, I don't have cats, but I have a lot of cat decks, or not a lot, but like 3, which is weird, right? So I would kind of like a dog deck. I was looking at a different dog deck that's quite delightful, and it's not a continental tradition deck, but it is pretty neutral, so it doesn't stick too overtly to Smithwaite tradition. But I really like the Tarot du Chien. I think it's cool. But it's very out of print. So I'll just keep an eye out. It's not an emergency. I don't need it at all. So it's just one that I'm kind of looking out for, for an affordable copy of it. And then there is a Tarot de Marseille bird, or what is it? There is one, I think it's by Nichiu, a Japanese company, although I'm not sure if that is a company that the original edition came from, or if it's kind of a knockoff. I can't tell. But it's the Bird Tarot de Marseille, and it's so cute. It has so many different birds. Again, it's very respectful to the TDM tradition. And the birds are really realistic looking, like you can identify what kind of bird they are. I love it. So that's another one that I could get it. It's available on eBay. So I guess it's not really a unicorn deck. It's just one that I'm like, I don't really need it though. So those are some that are on my list to keep an eye out for and decide if and when I want to get them. The Bird Tarot is not a unicorn deck at all because I could just order it. Maybe the unicorn aspect would be getting it for a more of a deal. We'll see. I do enjoy holding out for a deal. So those are some sort of unicorn decks that are on my list, which I just enjoy kind of keeping an eye out for. So let's flip this back around for prompt number 8. Number 8, show some cards from a deck that brings you joy, that is a go-to easy reader deck, something that lifts your spirits. And these colors are so fun and uplifting in the Estrella Tarot by Ash Listrea. The flowers are gorgeous, and the characters are so cheerful. But it is a traditional Tarot de Marseille, so it's also just super readable and a great everyday deck. But just being delighted all over again every time I come across some unusual color choices or botanical choices. Just really lifts my spirits whenever I use this deck. I just adore this. It's an old favorite. A lot of these characters are based on real people, so if you're interested in who they are, I will link my video on the different characters. You can also go to Ash's channel and see her discuss all of the different people depicted in French. Makes me so happy. Definitely an uplifting deck. That is the Estrella Tarot by Ash Lestrea. And number 9, show some cards from a deck that makes you feel warm and comfy. A deck that you would use for deeper readings, but it makes you happy every time you see it. I don't really distinguish between decks I use for deeper readings or practical readings. I think the same decks all do that for me. It more depends on what art style I'm in the mood for when I choose decks. If I want something with more symbolism in it, it might just be that I'm in need of some brain stimulation or something like that. So I do consider all of my traditional Tarot de Marseille decks to be perfectly great for deeper readings as well as practical ones. And this is Tarot de Maria Celia by Leonard Jim Narciso. I bring this one out a lot. It's an old favorite, and because it's so familiar, it's definitely a comfy, cozy deck, and the antique colors give it a warm feeling. So I thought this was definitely a good candidate for this tag. And the colors are just lovely and inspiring, so certainly appropriate for deeper readings. Number 10, pull a card or multiple cards from that last deck to give a parting message to everyone. Well, let's just see. As a parting message, I suppose we might be feeling content and secure in our connections with each other, but maybe it's time to move on and take some risks, break new ground, and create the next phase of community where everybody has a seat at the table, everybody belongs, and we make sure everybody is heard. And that might require, thinking outside the box quite a bit. Like I said, taking risks and seeing things from a novel perspective. Those, potentials and opportunities certainly give me hope and foster some joy in my cold little Capricorn heart, to quote Erin from Witches of Saturn. I think she said that a few days ago. So here's to being brave and to new perspectives, folks. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble. Thanks to Jack from Jack Greenwood Tarot for this lovely tag. Thanks to everyone else who participated in this tag as well. I really enjoyed watching the responses to it. Let me know if you did a response, or if you don't plan on it, feel free to put your responses down below in the comments. I look forward to talking to you. Thanks so much for being here, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.